Dan Rubenstein, it is time for the April Q&A episode, my friend. How are you today?
I'm good, and I appreciate you asking, and I'm especially good because I saw some of the questions, and they're great, as always. It's indicative that we're recording this on April 8th. This is Masters Week, by the way. Congratulations to you and yours.
A tradition unlike any other, of course.
But it's receiving questions in early April. You kind of get a sense for the vibes of where the generic college football fan's head is at. And it's always touched with like, okay, say Cade Klubnik is a dentist. Stick with me here. And there's a little bit of that to the questions we get, like, all right, for quick exercise, you're a unicorn who's just getting into college football. Which MAC team do you think appeals to your most discerning unicorn species?
Right.
Like, we get a lot of that.
And in this case, we got a question totally unrelated to college football regarding mermaids.
Did see that.
Are mermaids fish or are they humans? Maybe we can get into that a little bit later. Yes, it is that point in the off season where we start getting questions about mermaids and unicorns and you name it. Welcome back to the show. Hit follow, hit subscribe. Yes, we do have a variety, let's say, of college football questions that we're going to get into, most of which came from our team and community, super listeners, ardent fans. You know it well, verballers.com. I mention it at the beginning and end of every episode, Bonus content without the ads. You can submit questions all year through if you're ever so inclined.
Hey, real quick, it'd be great if you could consider subscribing to the YouTube channel down below. It really helps us out. You get question priority. So if you're thinking to yourself, like, hey, I'm a good-looking dude from Tulsa. I want them to talk more about Tulsa football. Why aren't they talking more about, send us an email, join the Patreon and get question priority. Like, you are in control, good-looking dude from Tulsa.
100%.
Or lovely-looking person from Duluth, Minnesota. Why aren't we talking more Gopher? Like, you're in control. And so pull the strings. Let us be your content marionettes, and we'll be happy to oblige. You just got to take it. What did you say? Content marionettes?
You said content marionettes.
Oh, I know. I didn't know if that's what you wanted to pull the thread on.
No, I was just going to say verballers.com. Verballers.com is where you can go for more information. Of course, that is not your speed. You are formally invited heretofore to just hit follow or subscribe.
Thank you.
And if you like the show, leave us a star rating or a review or a comment on any of the platforms that allow you to do so. All that stuff helps, okay?
Definitely.
So you know the drill. It is the off season. I talked about it about a week and a half ago. We're kind of plumbing the depths of the bottom of the off season right now. Maybe starting to get a little bit of a lift as we get deeper into April, as we start talking about spring football, quarterback battles. The draft is coming up, things of that nature. We will, of course, cover all of that here. But what we've been trying to do this offseason, really every offseason, every month, trying to do at least one Q&A episode because we know we get great questions.
We do.
From the community.
Consistently.
And I thought maybe we'd do that here today. So let's just dive right in.
Congratulations, Skippy. You've got mail.
You've got mail on the Solid Verbal.
Since the beginning of time, we've been doing this show since 2008.
Yeah.
We like to pay homage to the fine people that write in, solidverbal@gmail.com. We get questions out on email. We also get questions across social platforms, questions out on our Patreon. Again, at Dan, what is that URL? Just one more time for the fine folks.
On the Patreon one?
Yes.
Verballers.com. VERBALLERS.com.
You nailed it. Let's first start out with this one that comes to us from Alex. With college football becoming increasingly NFL light, what is the line that the game would have to cross to make you decide that enough is enough and stop watching for good, Dan? Does that line exist for you?
It's a gray area. It's a hazy line. No, college football can do almost nothing to completely turn myself away. Is that English? From the sport. There is, but in terms of this being my job, and in terms of my marrow love for the sport, it would take a lot, but if you keep taking the thing further away from the main thing, as we've been doing, and it's not a realignment thing per se, but then when you start kicking out Oregon State and Wazoo,
right,
and when your team in the ACC is used to playing, a familiar looking schedule, and it becomes more and more populated with Stanford, Cal, SMU. We haven't played Florida State in 4 years. Like, the more we get away from familiar territory, and I know the only certainty in life is change and, things evolving, but the further we get from that, the more difficult it will be to make a game that doesn't involve my team or a team I'm interested in, but it's kind of a big game. Like, yeah, it seems that Oklahoma State Baylor is kind of a big game, but then it's just like, well, I don't know if I'm going to stream it while watching my kid play Little League because it just feels weird. And I guess Oklahoma State Baylor is a bad example because they've played forever. But if, San Diego State is a meaningful team in the Big 12 in 7 years, and you're like, yeah, it's a pretty big game, San Diego State, TCU. And you're just like, okay. That hurts. So the more we hurdle towards that, the easier it will be to ignore those types of specifics. The more we exclude teams, quality programs that I've grown to love for what they've been over the years, that if all of the sudden, Arkansas is not in the SEC because it just doesn't make financial sense. You're just like, God, that sucks. I don't know if I want to watch SEC football in the same way. Like that, it's sort of an aggregate of things of Oregon State, Washington State type events happening, and getting into that Super League, getting into like excluding Indiana, excluding Arizona, whatever it is, like that to me would turn my stomach to the point where I would have less personal interest in the sport while maintaining professional interest.
Look, I have been watching this sport my entire life. I have made a career out of it now. To your point, I think there is very little that could happen that would completely turn me away. I understand the popular answer here would be to say this, X, Y, and Z, and then I'm out. I'm done. I can't in good faith say that because I don't think that would be the case. I do hearken back, though, to something that was once written by the wise prophet Spencer Hall when he compared the NFL to college football. And he said the NFL is like paying for sex.
For your consideration on any podcast player, search Solid Verbal, find us, and hit follow or subscribe. It's just that easy.
The difference between pro football...
I mean, you would know. Go on.
Of course I would. The difference between pro football and college football is the soul. Yeah. In my view, and I'm biased. But college football has a soul that I do not think exists with the NFL. That's why I think it's better. That's the first thing. And I guess the things that come to mind first are, if you're truly going to kill this thing in the mind of a fan, how can you kill that soul? One way to do it is regionality. This is still a sport built around regionality. You have the Southern identity for football. You have conference identity for football. College football has organized itself just on the fan level in a couple different warring factions. But if you take away that regionality, that, I don't know, community aspect of it, then I could see some people being turned off.
Sure.
If you take away the David versus Goliath side of college football, well, when it gets to the latter stages of the season and you've got a team ranked in the top 10 playing a team that's not ranked at all, one of the things that keeps fans coming back for more, keeps fans interested in watching that game just at all, is because there is potentially a threat of an upset. If you move to a super league, if you start grouping these together like it is an NFL light, you potentially lose some of that David versus Goliath. You potentially stop seeing the 30-point spreads and see much more along the lines of the NFL, where every game is a 3, a 4, or a 7-point line.
Right.
David versus Goliath, you take that out of college football, I think that steals a little bit of the soul from it. And I would go further, and this is not a show about politics, but we did see in 2020 college football was politicized. Okay? Yep. I'm not arguing one side or the other, but I can tell you what people wrote into us. And what people wrote into us is the fact that college football was so much under the microscope with respect to politics and are they going to play, are they not going to play? I mean, there were clearly some pretty contrasting opinions on both sides of that argument, but that turned a lot of people off on both sides of the aisle. And hopefully that is not something that comes back into the sport. I fear it will. clearly we know that there are House settlements and there are conversations about should Congress get involved? How does the NCAA factor in? It's unavoidable on some level that everything in this world isn't touched by politics, especially college football.
Everything is politics.
But I hope we can keep as much out of that as possible, just because I do think every time it inserts itself, you have some fans who are like, you know what? I come to sports to get away from the politics. Sure. Those are three things. Those three things, I think, strike at the soul of the sport and make it what it is and make it unique and fun to watch and like an escape for people when they watch on the weekends. For me personally, I don't know if any of those things would ever turn me off completely, but that's where I would look first to answer Alex's question.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're sort of saying the same thing in different ways. It's the further we get from the core of why we love this sport, and so having more neutral site games in NFL stadiums, like there's just something visual and ingrained in how the sport looks, how the sport sounds, how the sport is built, and again, everything changes. But like there's going to come a day where you watch a Notre Dame game or you watch a Penn State game and a dude has 3 sacks and you are going to say, a Penn State edge or something, and you're going to say, I have no idea who this guy is. Right. I have no idea where he came from. I have no idea if he was a high school recruit or if he was a transfer from Bowling Green or if he was a transfer from, the University of British Columbia or something. That there is going to be something where you're just like, it's gotten so far away from the community aspect, right, the cultural aspect, the social aspect, and it'll make it kind of sad. And look, this is going to happen to all of us as we get older, Ty. And you can speak to this more than I can in your mid to late 40s.
Oh, I hate you.
You've talked to your generation about this kind of thing. Where like you just have to abandon certain things not because you dislike it, you're just like, it's so unfamiliar and I don't have time to learn about where popular music is or trendy restaurants are going, or you're just like, I kind of like what I like and I'm happy for the people that are on TikTok and following trends, and I hope it brings them great joy and closure and whatever else they need from it. But like it's just too much for me, and I hope that we don't get there with college football. But I think it would be weird to deny that you and I, being in our 40s and far away from college at this point, like that has something to do with it.
It does.
That you're just like, this is what college football is in my brain. And the farther we get away from it, like the easier it will be to say, like, I still love college football for what it can be, but there are certain aspects where it's just like, yeah, I'm just not going to follow recruiting anymore. It got too weird. Or I'm just not going to like watch a Big Ten game or a SEC game or an ACC game or a Big 12 game or whatever, because it's just like Stanford Cal has ACC championship game implications. You're just like, I don't know. I don't think that's what it's supposed to be. And I don't know. I think part of it is just going to be our age.
Each of us is fully entitled to make college football be whatever we want it to be. Everybody has their own definition of that. I rode in the shuttle after dropping off my car the other day. I was talking to a guy in the car about college football, and he's like, I don't know about any of the new rules. I just like watching Penn State. I don't follow recruiting. I don't follow the news. I'm not going to listen to your podcast. He asked what I did, but I just like watching on Saturdays.
Totally.
That's cool. Make great of it whatever you want, whatever brings you the most joy.
I am of the mind that the more we empower TV executives to run this sport, the worse it's going to get, and the farther away from, look, the games will still be on Saturdays. They're still going to be in Beaver Stadium. They're still going to be in Autzen Stadium. They're still going to wear, navy and white and green and yellow and black and silver and white, whatever. Like there's going to be something visually familiar, but it's going to be more difficult to relate to the sport the more TV executives are in charge. And I mean, you've been places, what the term overfishing is, where it's just like, we got to get every single lobster off. And they're like, no, there are rules. You don't bring up pregnant lobsters, right? You have to like think about the future of the ecosystem so that you don't ruin things in the long term for the benefit of the short term. And I feel like inserting TV people into every conversation about this sport is just going to overfish it.
Okay.
And That's going to be unfortunate.
Let's go to Dan on Patreon. He says, this is a really good question, actually.
Okay.
That I have not seen enough places, frankly. What does Arch Manning need to do to live up to the hype?
What does Arch need to do to live up to the hype?
That's it.
He needs to be in New York. He needs to be a Heisman finalist, and there's no reason to think he won't be, given the receivers. I know they're turning over the offensive line at Texas, but the offense, how good Sark has been with quarterbacks traditionally. Texas has to be a playoff team, and it has to be in large part due to Arch's brilliance as a starting quarterback. He has to end up in New York, and I think he is, as he becomes somebody that's more and more in the spotlight, he's going to have to acquit himself in like a pretty charming way, because that's sort of what's asked of somebody that has this much attention, that he's going to have. I don't know what his smile looks like. Cam Newton has $1 million smile, right? That's part of it. Like Johnny Manziel, charisma. Yeah. Cam Newton, charisma.
What's interesting about Arch is he basically didn't talk for an entire year.
Right.
And if you saw any of the interviews that he did, any of the media, and he still didn't do a whole lot of it that he did over the last, 12 months or so, he is very engaging. He does seem like somebody who's received a little bit of media training. He does seem like a Manning, somebody who is used to being in the spotlight in some regard.
I was going to say that I don't know if Eli's hosted SNL. Peyton Manning has hosted Saturday Night Live, his uncle. Eli Manning and Peyton Manning are TV personalities, and like Eli Manning is doing like goof videos on YouTube and on his show on whatever, on Omaha ESPN. Like his uncles are both personalities and Hall of Fame caliber NFL quarterbacks. So for him to live up to the hype, which by the way, I don't personally care about. Like, he doesn't have to be the most personable guy in the world. He doesn't have to be in New York for me to think he's a really good quarterback, prospect, whatever. But in terms of living up to the hype of being Arch Manning and being in the EA Sports commercials and everything like that, that would be the only way I think you could satisfy people hungry for Arch Manning to fulfill his destiny as like the next great name.
I don't think he needs to win a national championship, though obviously that would help.
No.
But I agree with you. He needs to get to New York in order to satisfy at least the performance side of the expectations. Frankly, it's sort of an impossible situation for him.
It's impossible.
Though I would have liked to see him play sooner, I understand why he didn't. Quinn Ewers was there. I do think the way that Texas has gone about having him on the roster, the way he has gone about just his early career as a college football player, has actually been quite smart. And they have done as much as humanly possible to shield him from being thrown into the limelight too soon. He clearly wanted to be at Texas. That's why he's still at Texas, why he did not opt to go elsewhere before this past season. He likes being there. He likes playing for Sark. He feels like that puts him in the best position to go on and be successful at the NFL. It just feels like everything that he has done so far has been to guard against a little bit of what could be falling into an abyss if you can't live up right away to that hype.
So the interesting thing is, though, so basically sitting, he's started a little bit with Quinn Ewers' injuries. Sitting for as long as he has is almost unheard of for a player of his status coming in as a 5-star recruit, especially given his last name and his family. So it almost is as if the hype has been mounting for so long.
I know.
That he is not even going to be afforded the opportunity to be only good.
He probably won't be, but I'll tell you this.
Yeah.
He'll be nothing if not prepared. At least he should be prepared. He did
that. Well, I mean, so that adds to the pressure.
I agree.
Though, that like you've had this long to develop into the next great college football quarterback. If you're not great, what is it that you've been doing for these past 2 years?
I get it.
At a place that should be as good at developing quarterbacks as anybody in the country. He has as good a receiving core, I believe, just in terms of what the recruiting rankings and, the reports out of Austin are. Like, this should be a pretty deep and interesting recruiting room. And so if he's not great, even with a good amount of live experience as a starting quarterback and a quarterback in relief, then you kind of question like, oh, was this guy never going to be this good? Like, was just from the start, was he his ability overstated because of his last name? And so it's an unbelievable amount of pressure given how long he's had to fully mature into the quarterback he'll become.
Let's kind of stay on the Texas beat for a second. This one comes to us from Joshua.
Please.
How will Texas versus Ohio State affect your perception of each team, and how will it affect your perception of the 2025 college football season? So he brings this up because Texas and Ohio State play in the Horseshoe week 1. It is an awesome week 1, by the way, in 2025. I won't go through the full list of games, but there are some really good games in week 1. Get excited about that. It's been a couple years since I think we had like banger after banger. This is looking like it's going to be a pretty good week 1. Texas versus Ohio State. Both programs in a position where they're not ranked that highly in terms of returning production. It also doesn't really matter for either of these teams because recruiting has been so strong. I think it probably will be more evident on the Ohio State side since there is so much leaving that offense. And it seems to me anyway, like there will be a little bit more continuity on the Texas side, at least when they have the football.
I mean, that's a new offensive line.
New offensive line. I think my initial impression of this question is it would affect me more. It would affect my perception more if Texas went in and laid an egg. If Texas went in and laid an egg, kind of on the heels of the Arch Manning conversation that we just had.
Yeah.
Versus an Ohio State team that's got a lot new quarterback, running backs, wide receiver. I mean, to some degree, wide receivers. The line still kind of in question. A bunch of guys leaving the defense. Ohio State, to me, even if they lose, it feels like because they are starting anew at so many positions, there is ample time for them to get better. And since Texas is probably going to be a top 10 team, it's not like that's a bad loss. Right. You just don't want to get blown off your own field. But if Texas goes in, if they lay an egg, then I think it's fair to start wondering, okay, is this going to be the golden age? Is this going to be the year for Texas? They just lost to Ohio State. They have an opportunity to avenge a loss here if they come in and if they don't look at least like they're up to that challenge. I think that would probably affect me more.
I think this game means so much in terms of entertainment value week 1. But when you look at how new both of these teams are assuming it's Julian Sayin for Ohio State and Arch Manning for Texas. Right. So you have first-time, full-time starting quarterbacks. Arch has started games before and played in games. Julian has not. And they're both going to be playing behind largely, if not completely new offensive lines. They will be throwing to experienced receivers, and they will be supported by largely new defenses, though both have a couple of huge pieces back. Caleb Downs is obviously the headliner of all those guys, but there are obviously up front for Texas some huge names back. Colin Simmons, like there's good names on defense to support where the offenses are going to be. But it's week 1, and you are afforded at least one, probably 2 mulligans if you're a program of these sizes. And the time between whatever the date is, August 30th or September 1st, whatever week 1's date is, the time between that and Selection Sunday in early December feels more astronomical than ever because of the mulligans. You're just like, it's losing to Texas, but like that's as good a loss as you're going to get in this sport week 1. We've seen teams get destroyed week 1. We saw Clemson get destroyed week 1 by Georgia. We saw Oregon get destroyed by Georgia a couple years ago. Ultimately, it didn't matter. It mattered like, okay, this is what their ceiling probably is. Clemson still won the ACC and went to the playoff. Oregon was still right in there. That was Dan Lanning's first game, and they ended up winning 10 games that year. And so week 1, I think more than anything is just like, okay, let's get a nice little early season snapshot against a quality team. But I think it's more indicative of like, okay, this is what a team needs to work on in September, more than like, this is how I'm judging a team for the next 14 weeks.
Yeah, I think that's fair. By the way, I got my numbers mixed up, And
okay,
Texas has far more returning production on defense than it does on offense.
Yeah.
So I was saying it and it wasn't computing as I was saying it, but look, these are two teams that we can split hairs over what the numbers are, but there is a fair amount walking out on both sides.
Yeah.
I like the continuity of having Arch there.
Mm-hmm.
To the previous question, I like the continuity of having him there on offense, and I think that should give them a good starting point, if nothing else, to go on the road and maybe get a big win in the shoe week 1.
Yeah, Texas is down. I think Hedu's on the defensive line, a couple key guys, their best corner, best nickel safety type in the secondary. But yeah, there's a ton of production back at linebacker, a lot of rotation guys in the secondary. So I think they're ahead of where Ohio State should be in terms of experience on defense. But game's in the shoe, right?
Game's in the shoe.
That's a tough place to start your season.
Eric says, how would you compare the Bryce Underwood hype train to other recent quarterback hype trains? So he brings up Quinn Ewers. He brings up Trevor Lawrence.
Sure.
Or at least it conjures up images of those guys when he asks this question, when I think about it. I think it's right up there, to be honest with you. I don't know if Bryce Underwood quite has the name appeal, name recognition as some of the guys that came before him that were as highly rated. Surely it does within the Michigan community. I mean, that goes without saying. But
yeah,
I think just in terms of the Michigan fan base, having watched the season they watched, knowing that you're getting the number 1 overall quarterback, number 1 overall player, at a time when you desperately need better quarterback play, that to me, I think in and of itself is going to put so much pressure on him. The hype train is going at full speed. If he goes out there early in the season and is the starter, as some reports have indicated, he might be the front runner to get that job.
And they have Oklahoma week 2.
Yeah. If we see Bryce Underwood go out there and perform at a moderately decent level, I'm not even talking all-star, but just don't do anything stupid, clearly elevate their quarterback play over where it was a year ago, I think the hype train will almost go on without any breaks. I think you will see that accelerate. You will hear a lot more people talking about Bryce Underwood. It's just not there yet on the national level. I don't think it'll take much to get there.
Right. So the few things that play here with Bryce Underwood and hype. 1, he grew up in the shadow of Ann Arbor, I believe,
Correct.
Right? Really close to Ann Arbor. 2, we are playing in the NIL era. And so attached to Bryce Underwood's recruitment is alleged millions upon millions of dollars that he has commanded, and I say that in a positive way, for his services and his NIL services, whatever. 3, he was committed to a major program that's not in the shadow of Ann Arbor. A major coach, a major program in LSU, and there was a very high-profile decommitment and commitment to Michigan.
Right.
3, 4, 5, I don't remember what number I'm on bullet point wise. Michigan just won a national championship. And so they're in the wake of them succeeding on a level that they haven't for a long, long time. They're now hungry for more, Ty.
Right.
And now they've seen what can happen without a quality quarterback running things and a quality offense running things. So then there's a new kind of hunger for quality at quarterback there. You have the new era of college football where the Big Ten now has higher profile opponents and teams like Oregon and Washington and Michigan added to all of these teams' schedules. And his specific style of play as a dual threat is especially tantalizing. And so you can say whatever you want about other quarterbacks who have like profoundly impressive abilities throwing the ball. But to have somebody like, oh, is he the next Lamar Jackson? Is he the next Cam Newton? Is he the next Terrell Pryor? Whoever. You're just like, that can take an offense to such a crazy level that you can't help but be wowed by the potential. And so, yeah, I think the local element of this, and Trevor Lawrence, even though he's not from South Carolina, I believe where he's from is really close to Clemson.
Sure.
And Cam Newton's from Georgia, went to Florida, and then obviously to Auburn. Like, he's from the area, he's from the region. But I think it's different when somebody is so hyper local as like the next great thing. And there's a pretty good chance he's doing it almost immediately, so that you can't be patient with Bryce Underwood if you're a Michigan fan, because you're going to see him likely in September, either as a starter or somebody who's heavily involved in the game plan. And so he's up there, man. He is way, way up there, given the hunger in Ann Arbor. So yeah. I can't imagine somebody who was definitively above him in terms of incoming hype in the last 5 years. Or so.
And by the way, we've seen this before.
I mean, other than, I guess, Archman.
He
wasn't coming in as like the expected compete for the job guy.
Yeah. What we've seen happen before, especially with some of these highly touted recruits, not just at the quarterback position, but in many cases where you do have somebody who's local to the area, generally speaking from the same region, a lot of people in that region, in that conference, certainly the people who are hanging out on message boards, they know all about the guy. The rest of us don't. Maybe you and I do, but the overwhelming majority of college football fans don't know who that person is until they go out there early part of the season, start making hay, then suddenly the hype breaks contain. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we could see with Bryce Underwood if he's half as good as we've been led to believe.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it from all over, like highly, Matt Barkley at USC, right? Yeah. He's from Orange County, right? He comes in, he plays immediately as a starter. He was a really good USC quarterback.
Really good.
Is he going to be as fondly remembered as somebody who won a national championship at USC as Matt Leinart, who also grew up there? Probably not. Matt Leinart had some time to develop. Matt Barkley was like immediately, he's just like good-looking blonde kid, blue eyes, whatever. You're just like, oh, this guy just is the prototype for a quarterback at USC. I'm like, all you can say about him was he was really good for USC, but because of that local hype, I don't think USC fans are immediately going to be thinking about Matt Barkley in the same way they think about a couple other guys ahead of him, which is just like a product of having that 5 stars next to your name and being from the area.
PJ wants to know, how many years can Sherrone Moore miss the playoffs but beat Ohio State and still keep his job?
The expectation for Michigan, rightfully so, given resources, given recent success, should be much more often than not being in the playoff conversation in November. And if it's only conversation, if they're like, ooh, they're 7-2 every year, but blow it near the end, but beat Ohio State, I think it's going to get old. I don't think Michigan people will be happy going 3 years in a row, beating Ohio State and not playing in January.
Beating Ohio State is a nice cherry on top of the season. It is hard, though, I think, if you're a Michigan fan, to recognize that, well, we beat Ohio State, but Ohio State went on to win the national championship. You still don't really want to see that. You'd still much rather it be your team, frankly, any other team other than Ohio State. So I agree with you. I think that will paper over some sins.
How many Big Ten teams made the playoff this past
4
year? 4? Indiana, Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State. If Michigan is not consistently one of 4 or 5 as the playoffs are expanding, he's gone.
Yeah.
Like, beating Ohio State is amazing. Arguably the most important thing you can do at Michigan, but it's not the only thing that keeps you employed.
I would give it 2 more years. Especially now.
If he doesn't make the playoff, 2 more years?
Especially now, 2 to 3 more years, especially now with this hype around Bryce Underwood, and recruiting has picked up. I mean, they clearly are trying to get better at the positions where they felt they were deficient. 2 to 3 more years. Keep beating Ohio State, that's great. But at some point, the rubber meets the road. You got to get in the playoff. It's a good question, PJ. Here is one from Georgia is a Verb out on Patreon.
Okay.
Which team do you feel like you already have the most fully formed opinions about going into next season?
Man, okay.
So this is not a preview episode. We haven't started really researching much preview content at all. That will be for late stage June and probably, let's say, early July.
Yep.
Where do you stand on this question?
Which teams do I have the most fully formed opinions of? So it's got to be somebody with a ton of returning production. It's got to be somebody returning a quarterback. It's got to be somebody returning, probably both, if not hopefully one of the coordinators and a head coach that you're just like, yeah, I kind of have a great concept for what this team is and isn't, even with, expected improvement, expected, steps taken in the wrong direction. I don't know. I'm kind of there with Kansas State a little bit. That like there's enough continuity there, even with a kind of a coordinator change. Matt Wells has been there. I'm kind of there with Arkansas on a certain level. We're like, I think I have a good concept that like Arkansas can win a couple of those games that they gave away, but I don't think they're going to mount either an incredible defense, and at times the offense will look incredible, and they probably have a ceiling of about 8 or 9 wins, and that's Arkansas. I feel like I have a good concept for Tennessee. Yeah. Continue.
I would like to express my love right now for the Clemson Tigers.
Okay. That's a good answer.
I am all in on the Clemson Tigers. I am reopening the club level for this season only.
Case to be made that they have one of the best 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the country as of now.
The version of Cade Klubnik that we saw in the playoffs was incredible.
Yeah.
Part of Cade Klubnik's problem is that you don't get that version all the time. But if we see more of that, it makes Clemson better for it.
Yeah.
Clemson's got, I think, the most returning production on offense of any team in college football. That's helpful. They're a top 10 returning production team on defense. That's helpful. Their schedule sets up beautifully. They've got LSU to start the season, South Carolina to close it, in between kind of that normal mess of ACC teams that at some point will probably be ranked. Louisville being a good example. I'd imagine Florida State, potentially one of those as well. You've got a bunch of teams, maybe North Carolina. I don't know, teams in the middle that I'm not sure we fully know where to rank them at time of recording here in early to mid-April.
Right.
It's very workable. It's very workable, especially for a team with that much experience and that much veteran leadership. So for me, I saw this question as I immediately had a visceral reaction thinking of Clemson. I think that's the answer, the only answer for me.
I mean, I would go with one of your schools in Penn State, where it's just like, they should have a really good defense. They should have an offense that scores points against mediocre teams, and they might struggle on offense. They will likely struggle on offense against the better defenses on their schedule and the better built teams on their schedule, because that's like 93% of the James Franklin experience at Penn State.
By the way, that's 93% of the rest of college football, too. You play against the better defenses, the better constructed defenses. Unless you're Ohio State, the offense doesn't look nearly as good. But I tried to veer away from the Penn States and the Notre Dames and the Oregons for this question because that would be probably a little bit too predictable. Clearly, I have some pretty good opinions on.
But they're returning an offensive coordinator. They recruit so well on defense, and the identity seems to be, even with a coordinator change, that the identity is so strong on defense, and the assistants have been there for a while now on defense, that like they are a 10-2 type program who far more often than not will be in the playoff and will beat, they're not going to lose to SMU. They're just not. But they're going to struggle. Like getting over a fence, getting over a hump, whatever, for Penn State seems to be the James Franklin experience. He is a very, very good coach, if not a great coach. But you kind of have a concept for Penn State every year.
This is a really good question from Janie.
Okay.
We have talked about, I guess, the other side of this question until we're blue in the face. Who do you think were the biggest losers in the new expanded 12-team playoff era? We've talked about this, more times than I could remember.
The winners?
The winners. Penn States and the Tennessees and the Notre Dames. The team, Utah didn't get in this year, but Utah could have been a winner this year.
Right.
Because these were teams that historically had been boxed out of getting into a 4-team format. But expand the field, suddenly you're letting different teams in. Boise State getting in, clearly a huge winner to get to play on that stage. Maybe not the way they played, but who are the losers?
Big Ten West teams? Because there's an ability to inflate your final record and ranking based on lack of opponent offense playing in the Big Ten West at times. Like Wisconsin's a loser in this. Wisconsin, the best years of Wisconsin football, Wisconsin was a legitimately very, very good team, if not great team sometimes. But at times, they were difficult to fully gauge because of their schedule. And having down Illinois and down Purdue and down Nebraska and down Minnesota, some combination thereof, it's tough to fully know. There were years that the SEC East would have a number of down down Tennessee, down Vanderbilt, down South Carolina. And so teams that would pop up in one of those divisions and make it to, when Mizzou was legitimately great when they were making SEC championship games. They've proven that they can succeed in a divisionless SEC world, but they've been through some challenges. Mizzou has since, those early, like crazy Coney Ely, Michael Sam defensive lines, Dorial Green Beckham, like those were nice paths to have for Mizzou when Georgia wasn't fully Georgia in the early, I think it was early 2010s we're talking about right now. And so I'm trying to think of who else. Like UCLA is kind of a big loser right now in the Big Ten. Just it doesn't seem like this version of UCLA is going to be able to build a team to compete for 9 or 10 wins, and they really weren't able to in the Pac-12, especially now. It seems like trying to sell kids on going to UCLA and playing all over the Midwest and East Coast is going to be especially difficult for a program that doesn't seem fully committed to succeeding on a high level in football. Who do you have?
Well, I kind of went a different way with this.
Okay.
I think if you work an office job and you're a college football fan, this playoff system caused some issues. They played some of these games on weird days at weird times that they wouldn't normally.
Oh, so you're going non-college football people who are losing out because of this.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk to it from about 1,000 different angles.
Okay.
But that was the first thing that came to mind. I mean, you and I know how discombobulated we were just trying to follow this because so much of our fall is based around Saturday being the epicenter of everything. When you change that, clearly we can find a way around it, but it makes it harder for people at home to watch.
Sure.
If you're doing it during the week. Now, it was over the holidays. It's probably not fair to fully lump this in as a bad thing because in many cases we were getting football on nights we wouldn't otherwise.
Right.
So it's not inherently a bad thing. I do think it was more inconvenient. So there are definitely some people out there who are like, I got to go to work tomorrow.
Yeah.
We're going to DVR this one. We'll watch the highlights on SportsCenter tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that comes to mind.
SportsCenter still exists? That's still on?
It does. Apparently, yes.
Okay. You got to find it.
Apparently, yes.
Okay.
I think Greg Sankey would argue that the SEC was a big loser.
Yeah. I mean, as schedules get more difficult and no conference is fully going to get the benefit of the doubt if you get those third losses in there. Yeah.
Greg Sankey would argue, he has argued, that the SEC missed out. Lane Kiffin argued that Ole Miss was a big loser in this system.
But they definitely, Ole Miss won their bowl game, right? To sort of shut up everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
I do think that the biggest loser is probably some of those early season games that typically would have a lot more of an impact when it comes to the postseason.
But Ole Miss won their bowl game by 32 points.
I'm aware. Thank you.
And we're all the better for them beating up on Duke. Yeah.
But like Notre Dame losing in week 2 to NIU.
Yeah.
Those are the types of games that people talk about for years to come. We did a whole episode talking about ones that we remember from years past.
Upsets, yeah.
The ones that occurred in years past had a lot more significance at the end of the season. Now, Notre Dame went on this incredible run. They ripped through the field. They end up with just one regular season loss. Clearly, they're going to get in. There has been an argument against this playoff format because of that very circumstance.
Yeah.
Giving the regular season a little bit less value. I'm not going to argue that those people are wrong. I do think it gave the regular season a little bit less value. I don't think I mind it. I'm okay with this format. But I certainly understand that argument, and I think you can make a case that the early part of the season, some of the upsets, or at least the thrill of the upset that we saw throughout the course of 2024, the significance of those games perhaps was the biggest loser in this expanded format?
I would say the salespeople who are selling title sponsorships for bowl games, because it does not seem...
Bowl games, by the way, might be the answer.
Bowl games are an answer.
Non-playoff bowl games might be the answer to Janie's question.
Yeah, it's just tough when you see some of the stands empty. It's tough when you're like, yeah, this game was sponsored by an office park in Nampa, Idaho. You're just like, okay, that seems disappointing. It seems like a low bar to clear. So, yes, I would say the attention and the merit and the prestige of mid-tier bowl games that don't have a fun sponsor like, Cheez-It or Pop-Tarts or something like that, a snackable sponsor.
Right.
It seems like they've taken a hit in terms of relevance for sure.
I think that's fair, Dan. Okay. Let me pull up this next question.
Yeah.
This one is about preferred offensive styles.
Okay.
Which style of football / offense is the most effective when all cylinders are running? So a couple different ways that you can take this question, right?
Yeah.
I think the spirit of what Jordan was going for with this question is specific offensive system.
Yeah.
Specific offensive system that you feel when it is fully optimized is virtually unstoppable.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that comes to mind? Because I have a couple.
Any species of power running. If you're able to control clock, if you're able to physically control a team, if you are able to mentally control a team that they can't get off the field on 3rd and 3, and that you are just mowing down clock and ending drives and points, especially touchdowns.
So this is 2023 Michigan.
But the offense wasn't. I don't have the numbers in front of me. 2023 Michigan, I think, was more led by defense and an efficient offense. I think this is more like the height of early Bama on the ground. This is the height of Stanford. This is the height of option teams where you're just like, you're losing every game 24-7. You have the ball 19% of the time, and there's not much you can do because your defense can't get off the field. In terms of pure efficiency, I think that's the way to go, because you're asking about offensive style, and if you're sort of talent agnostic on this, if I'm using that term correctly, where you're just like, yeah, if you have like Alabama's receivers from 2020 and 2019, that's the best style. But no, that's not a style as much as it is construction and style. But if it's pure, like, this team will score 3.5 points a drive and almost never give the ball up because it is such a ball control heavy team, and there's blocking tight ends and blocking receivers and nasty guards, whatever. I think from an efficiency standpoint, you're going to probably have less turnovers because you're not throwing the ball a ton. I think a highly powerful rushing attack based offense, but whether it's the spread with Ohio State and Ezekiel Elliott or something like that, or if it's power like Stanford under center, whether it's the best of the option teams, I think that's the height of perfect demoralizing offensive football.
The first thing that came to mind for me was, and again, Jordan's question here is, when fully optimized, what style is most effective?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not pretty, effective.
Doesn't need to be pretty. It needs to be effective.
Yeah.
I think if you've got a quarterback, maybe not with crazy arm talent, but a quarterback who knows how to process and makes good decisions, understands the offense.
Right.
If you've got that guy, which clearly feeds into being fully optimized.
But that's not a system.
It's not a system. I'm getting to the system.
That's an attribute. Yeah.
You need that attribute to make this system go.
Sure.
The system I'm thinking of is pretty much like the modern spread offense, but with RPO concepts mixed in. Because if you've got an offense like that, you're already taking advantage of space. It's an adaptable offense that you can do a lot with. You can run out of that. Clearly, you can pass out of that.
Right.
It keeps defenses honest. Are you backing off receivers? Are you playing up to guard against RPOs? Are you playing up to guard against the run? Can you even afford to stack the box without risking something over the top? If you've got the quarterback who knows how to make that engine go and knows how to read a defense and where the ball needs to go, not necessarily throwing dimes 35 yards down the field, but just knows where the ball needs to go and what the right way is to call out protections and call the best possible play. That system of plays, I should say, with those RPOs mixed in is kind of unguardable.
Right.
It's kind of unguardable. So I'm with you on the power rushing attack. That could be frustrating as hell, and it's hard to watch. It is hard to watch if your team is playing a team like that.
Yeah.
But for my money, where we're at right now, mix in some version of the spread with RPOs with a quarterback who knows where he is supposed to go with the football. That's very frustrating as well.
Yeah, so here's what I would say. I would say we're sort of both talking about the same thing.
We are. We kind of are, aren't we?
We're talking about the same thing. You're talking more about, qualities that a quarterback has in running that offense. I think we're talking about 2011 Wisconsin. I think we're talking about Russ Wilson, Paul Chryst, Brett Bielema, Chris Ash is running the defense. That was his first year. I'm just reading Wikipedia at this point.
Yeah.
But that's a Monte Ball Wisconsin team with Wisconsin's only electric quarterback in the last however many years, if not ever. And they did meet their demise in the Rose Bowl. I think they lost 1 or 2 games in the regular season. But at its best, when that Wisconsin offense, without game-changing receivers in the way that we've grown to understand game-changing receivers in the last few years, they had good players, but not dominant players at receiver, if my memory serves. But having that type of offensive line and running back dominance with a quarterback who could complement that and at times, if needed, make huge plays, that's probably the most efficient way to do things in terms of demoralizing a team. We've had Alabama teams like that. Look, the most efficient element of an offense is to have a specific unstoppable star player. It's to have Lamar Jackson. It's to have Cam Newton. It's to hand the ball off to Derrick Henry and say, I think we're going to be all right. I think we're going to be all right, 2015 Alabama. But full composition, it's having those, to be able to do that for 4 quarters with multiple fresh legs, NFL caliber offensive line, and not overthink things and take unnecessary chances. It's probably the most efficient way to go. Teams just can't build that mostly.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
All right. I organized these into a couple buckets. I'm going to pick and choose here for, let's say, the next 10 minutes or so, Dan, and we'll wrap this one up. Whatever bonus content we can muster from this list of questions. We had a bunch that came in.
Yes.
We will include some of our favorites on the upcoming bonus episode that drops a little bit later this week out on Patreon.
So are we rapid firing non-college football right now?
We're just going to rapid fire questions in general. I'll get some non.
All right.
Okay?
All right.
Mr. Pizza Coley out on Patreon. What's your preferred overtime format? Go.
I'm kind of okay with where we are right now. I think there's a heightened sense of drama. I like that we've gotten rid of a fresh timeout for every overtime. And I'm good with the 2-point conversion thing. It makes for good TV. And I'm good with that as somebody who consumes this game largely on TV. So that's a cop-out answer.
Rapid fire.
Come on. It.
Commit.
Change. I'm good with it.
Speak with your chest. Go back to the 25-yard line. Have everybody start at the 25-yard line. The variation I put on it is everybody's got to go for 2 right away.
Good with that.
Got to go for 2 right away.
I'm absolutely good with that. Yes.
Okay. Get rid of the penalty kicks thing. But if you score a touchdown, you got to go for 2. You can't kick the extra point.
I agree with that.
All right. Andrew says, is parity a feature of the new Big 12 or a bug from the first season?
I wouldn't judge anything based on one season. I think parity is a feature.
I think parity is a feature, and I love it.
It's great.
I love it. Actually, we're going to talk about some Big 12 next week. So stay tuned, Andrew. Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Don't judge the Big 12 on national championships. Judge the Big 12 on how entertained am I week in and week out.
Chaka, would you be comfortable with Notre Dame, Penn State, and Oregon adopting a GM model like Stanford did with Andrew Luck?
Yes. Coaches aren't built to be administrators in the way that they're expected of in every instance. So, yes.
I like it. I think the caveat is that Andrew Luck has a certain amount of gravitas at Stanford.
Right.
He can come in and almost immediately garner the respect of fans of the program, administrators of the program, people that will work to help build that football program. I don't know if every place has a guy like that who is interested in stepping into that role. But I think in theory, I kind of like it because right now everyone's organized a little bit differently. I don't know to what end it leads to inefficiencies and that type of thing. Like if everybody is reporting into the head coach, but the GM is really just in terms of helping in terms of talent and not coaching staff. And it tends to get muddled. So I like it in theory. I've talked about it a couple times now, how I like it in theory, but I do think in this case it is very reliant on personality for Stanford. I hope it works.
The caveat here is the job has never existed in this specific way. And so like you'd be okay with it at your school if you have somebody offloading some of the responsibility from your head coach, interpersonal stuff, administrative stuff, but it's not an athletic director. It's not a head coach. It's somebody who can understand both of those worlds and occupy both of those worlds. So like, yes, you're okay with it, but it's going to take some time for a pool of people to understand and be able to execute the demands of that job.
If you had to add a third permanent host who was a former college football player, who would it be from Davis?
Andy Staples technically counts here, right?
He does. Yeah, he does.
It would be somebody that we have to have a good pre-existing rapport. It's mostly offensive linemen. Jeff Schwartz, Marshall Newhouse, Andy Staples.
I would add J.J. McCarthy.
Do you know who I think? Why J.J. McCarthy?
J.J. McCarthy.
He's very young. He won't understand any of our references. He's never heard of Seinfeld.
He won't understand any reference. He will breathe new life into our show and our demographics, I would add. He's also going to be the starting quarterback, I believe, for the Vikings, so he may not have the time. But he is technically a former college football player. And you know that, you and I both pay attention to this type of thing because we're in the media world here. But I am always listening to post-game interviews to try and evaluate which players I think will be good on camera or in some sort of studio setup or in a booth somewhere when their playing days are over. J.J. McCarthy is the smoothest in front of a camera of a current or former player, frankly, that I have ever seen in my life, and I don't want somebody
making us look bad. Physically, he's going to make us look ancient. I don't know about that.
These are all things that are true. I'm just saying in terms of somebody who could step in and immediately command the microphone and the audience, J.J. McCarthy is my answer.
Okay, so I'm only going to answer this from a perspective of people we don't know and haven't been guests, because I don't want to hurt. Like we've had, I think Yogi Roth would be great. Like he does a great job.
Sure.
All these players. So I don't know, even though I've interviewed him a couple times, I don't know him. I'm not friendly with him. I don't have a relationship with him. I kind of think RG3 is built to be a real quality podcaster. I don't know. He might have a podcast.
He's got a podcast.
Yeah,
I think he's got a podcast. Yeah.
I think his energy is really good for this medium. And I think he's a good play-by-play announcer. I think he needs to maybe lock in a little bit and stay on task. But I kind of enjoy that, he lets out his personality. He weirdly gets horny comparing things during a college football game. I can relate to that. So I would say RG3, I think, would be a welcome addition to the Solid Verbal universe.
Kyle out on Twitter. Yeah. If you were stuck on a deserted island and had to pick 2 college football coaches to be there with you, who would you pick? Now, we have gotten variations of this question a million times over the last 15 years. I thought this one was particularly interesting because, speaking for myself, I have no survival skills. Skills. So I need to pick 2 coaches that are probably physically fit enough that they can handle whatever sort of building needs to occur on the island to construct shelter, a raft, just something to keep you safe, maybe from the critters that are also on the island, as well as coaches who actually know how to survive without food, without potable water, without the types of things that you would need on a deserted island.
Herb Hand was on Chop.
So I have a couple names.
Hand was on Chop.
I have a couple names. Herb Hand was on Chop, but they gave him the ingredients.
I know, but what I'm saying is if he's wandering around an island and finding coconuts and finding leaves, he can assemble something for us.
The 2 head coaches that I zeroed in on. The first is Mike Gundy.
Okay.
Mike Gundy, if you go back, Bruce wrote an article 2017.
Is an outdoorsman.
Big time outdoorsman. Okay. Also kind of nuts.
Yeah.
Which I think you would need. I think you would need somebody who's got a little bit of a screw loose with you on the deserted island just to keep things fresh and interesting. he went on like rattlesnake hunts and knows a lot about hunting rattlesnakes and that sort of thing.
Okay.
I feel like Gundy would be a good addition. I would need somebody like that because I would probably be scared out of my mind to be on a deserted island. And I feel like Gundy's just a little bit crazy enough that he could take away some of that edge.
You're also going to have to
first
hang
one
out
for me.
with Mike Gundy all day, every night.
I understand that. I understand that. But I'm just thinking in terms of keeping my head above water here and surviving until a plane sees me with the mirror or something, right? Gundy, I think, is a good answer. The other one, believe it or not, is Scott Frost.
Okay.
And let me explain why.
Yeah.
Scott Frost grew up in rural Nebraska on a farm.
Okay, you're right.
And notably, he knows how to hunt. He knows how to fish. He knows how to conduct himself out in the wilderness.
Just tie out there with Mike Gundy and Scott Frost, chatting it up. Okay.
I'm not saying we got a whole lot of shared life experience. But give me the guy who hunts the rattlesnakes along with the farmer on the island. Both guys not afraid to conduct themselves in the outdoors.
That's true. That's a good answer.
Okay.
But I think
I need that. Otherwise, I'm dead.
But you are going to be sitting around a fire with these two.
I can make do. I can make do until the rescuers get there. But I just got to stay alive until they do.
Do you think either of those guys, between Scott Frost and Mike Gundy, let's say you're up climbing a tree in search of coconuts or something like that, and you fall and break your leg and it gets infected. Do you think either one of them would have what it takes to put you down?
To put me down?
Put me down. You just put you out of your misery.
Wow.
Or if Mike Gundy's climbing up a tree for some coconuts, that Scott Frost would have the stones to do what is needed.
I mean, Scott Frost couldn't finish when he was a coach.
That's true.
That was part of the problem. That's part of why he got run out of town.
Right.
So I'm not sure he would be the answer.
Tough decisions.
I couldn't
on a deserted island.
No. I would be there for random factoids that may only interest me. I could keep the conversation going. Yeah. Otherwise, I'd be useless. That's part of why I'm bringing these guys onto my island, because I feel like they at least would know what they're doing out there to keep us alive long enough, hopefully, until the rescuers get there.
I don't know the outdoors background of Shane Beamer, but there's something relentless about Shane Beamer that, like, he is not sleeping until this hut is built. And I kind of like that out of Shane Beamer. Also, he's younger, right? There's just going to be more energy. And Scott Frost is on the younger side, too. Mike Gundy's not young. So how much energy are you actually getting out of Mike Gundy? Like, sure, he has history trapping animals, but how old is he? 60-something?
Well, Shane Beamer is 48.
No, he's not 60-something. Mike Gundy is 50. He's a man. Excuse me. He's in his 50s.
He's 57.
Yeah.
Scott Frost is 50.
Yeah.
And your boy Shane Beamer is 48. Another name that I consider.
I would go Lanning with the relentlessness and the energy.
Another name that I considered, Jim Mora Jr.
Okay.
Jim Mora Jr. is apparently in impeccable shape. Mm-hmm. I believe he's 63.
Great.
So at least relative to some of these other names.
Are you saying that you'd
older.
be able to eat his carcass because he's
No. Let's
older?
Okay. Listen to me. Go and do some research on Jim Mora Jr. Jim Mora Jr. has done several adventures in mountaineering.
Okay.
He climbed Kilimanjaro to help benefit clean water in Africa. He also climbed Mount Rainier with, I believe it was Roger Goodell. And so he's clearly comfortable in that setting. Supposedly, his data was indicative of him being the best equipped of any of the other people on the adventure physically.
Okay.
He was in the best shape. So provided he takes care of himself, he is somebody else who is comfortable in that type of setting. The question did not specify whether or not this island has mountains on it. So if this is a mountainous island, then maybe I go somebody like a Jim Mora Jr. in place of a Scott Frost.
I mean, ultimately, how I think about this question is somebody who is physically capable of hunting a wild boar.
Right.
With self-made tools. I don't know about the ability to hike Mount Rainier, but somebody who has what it takes to hunt a wild boar and spearfish, build fires, and not seem like a complete jackass around a fire at night. So I don't know who fits that bill. You want somebody with a little bit of a screw loose, which you named.
Yep.
But I don't know, like which, like Sam Pittman on the older side.
Sam Pittman has talked about, I did a lot of research on this question, by the way.
Yeah.
Sam Pittman is on public record speaking of his enjoyment of being out there fishing and hunting, that type of thing. I mean, that is not something I know anything about.
Right.
So for me, we need to add that to our trio. Otherwise, I'm dead.
Yeah.
Somebody who can go out there and kill the wild boar, the wild game. Gundy would do it with his hands.
Yeah.
I mean, Gundy's crazy.
Sure.
So I would take Gundy on the island. Again, the fireside chatter I don't know about. But I am more interested in staying alive. I can deal with the occasional disagreement around the campfire.
Fair. All right. One more question.
Final question. I referenced it at the top. Is a mermaid a fish or a human?
Okay. Mermaid is a human to me because of having a human brain. I think that's the defining feature. My big question to you is, if you were an ancient sailor, do you think you could avoid the siren song?
No.
I definitely couldn't. I would definitely meet my demise because I would be seduced by the siren song. Do sirens are they mermaids?
I don't know.
I think they occupy the same space.
Okay. I mean, a mermaid speaks, it sings, it can fall in love. We've seen movies about that.
Well, that's Ariel. That's
Sure.
not necessarily, that's a Disney-fied version of it, but yeah.
Listen, Ariel is the prototypical mermaid.
Right.
It's at least 51% person.
I think it's 51% person.
So I'm going human with this. Thank you.
I don't know if I could fully fall in love with a mermaid, but a mermaid could talk me into some stuff.
I think I could justify it, Dan. If it were Ariel, I think I could justify it.
But you're talking Ariel with the tail or Ariel on land, unable to speak?
I mean, the question was about mermaids. I think I'm talking about with the tail. Yeah.
I think they are more human than not. Though it would give me pause about like the long-term romantic prospects.
Yeah,
But
where
yes.
do you live? What are jobs? How do you get money? That type of
No,
thing.
I'm not thinking about that. I'm just thinking about like whose space are we going to?
Right.
I don't know, but I would say more human than fish.
Got to have an in-ground pool, I'll tell you that.
But like, okay, so a mermaid has to have gills, right? If they're breathing underwater?
Sure.
So you're saying they think like a human, but physiologically they're alive because of their fish-like qualities.
Correct.
They move because of their fish-like qualities. They breathe because of their fish-like qualities. They hunt and eat because of their fish-like qualities. Their environment is a fish-like environment.
What do mermaids eat? Does anybody know?
I don't know. It's been a long time since I've seen The Little Mermaid or really researched mermaids.
Did they ever broach that subject in any
I
mermaid
assume
movie?
Kelp and other small plants attached to
that
coral.
could be a deal breaker. That could actually be a deal breaker for me. I'm out.
Because they're probably not eating other fish, though it's entirely possible, though Ariel was friends with fish and crabs, so I think the implication was Ariel. I don't remember what Ariel ate on land, though.
This is a very, very deep question. Thank you, Shay, for getting us
But I
down
would
this
imagine
rabbit
she's
hole.
more plant-based under the sea for me. Yeah.
We've got much more to discuss. We will do that on our bonus episode
Yes.
coming up a little bit later on this week. We've also got an interview. This is another one of those rare weeks where we're dropping public episodes on Wednesday and Friday.
Yep.
So stay tuned for that. We do have 2 episodes coming. This is the first of them. Of course, if you go to verballers.com, you can get access to the bonus episode where we are going to go through a bunch of these questions. And I feel like we need to unpack a little bit more on this mermaid thing. So we can do that when we record on whenever we do.
Have you been somewhere where they have the women in the fish tail apparatus? It's very uncomfortable.
It is uncomfortable. Yeah.
Okay.
I need to think more about this before I answer definitively. Okay.
We'll do an off
for that guy.
Mermaid show.
The Mermaid Show. Yeah. Yes. For that guy over there, my good friend, Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildebrand, for everybody who provided questions, gave us the content for this here episode. We appreciate it.
Yes.
Hit follow, hit subscribe if you have yet to do so. In the meantime, talk to you all soon. Stay solid.
Peace.